Welcome back to another interview with the legendary Wyatt Thompson. Wyatt, it's fantastic to have you on here as always.
I appreciate that, young man. Excited for what should be a heck of a good football game this week. I can't wait.
Yeah, so you got number 17 Kansas State going down to Fort Worth to take on number 8 TCU. And it is a battle of the final two unbeaten teams in Big 12 play. Kansas State and TCU are tied for first place. They both have 3 wins and no losses. And let me first say, Wyatt, that I had kind of put TCU in the pretenders category, not the contenders category, because there's so much about them that they could be really good, but they're so inconsistent. And it's like one day they're killing giants, and the next day they're getting run over by hedgehogs, and it's kind of like what's going on here? And I think that they proved that they're no longer the pretenders. That Oklahoma State's a good ball team, and to pull one out in double overtime like they did, that's impressive.
I'm with you, and I would add to that, to do that and coming from behind, even at home, to do it 24/7 down was very impressive. I think what I would say is, I think the ups and downs that you described probably happens a lot with first-year coaches, even though I think the guy that they hired, Coach Dykes, is terrific. He knew a lot about that football team because, hey, he was just working across town from Dallas to Fort Worth at SMU for the last few years. But they're starting to get some things figured out. They always have good talent. They have a defense always that can run and is athletic. But I think really at the end of the day, this right now is just all about Max Duggan and how well he's playing and his toughness. This last Saturday, from my perspective, was off the charts, and that's in part what led them back to victory.
Yeah. Well, and you talk so much about intangibles and that you want to have your senior quarterback, your guy who's taken extra years to stay with the team, to come up for you in those clutch moments. And he really did. I like what you said there. Mental toughness was definitely apparent in his play on Saturday.
He's one of those guys, Kolby, that can do a lot of things. Again, toughness is part of it. But I remember Coach Kleiman being asked at the press conference on Tuesday about his running ability, and it's not just called runs. It's runs when he has to make something happen or extend a play. He's become a much better, from my perspective at least, a much better and consistent thrower too. There's a big difference at this level from being 62, 63% to knocking or above 70%. And he's kind of there. He's just been really good. He has one great thing going for him, and that's number one, Quinton Johnston, who's just such a big athletic target at 6'4" and 215 pounds. There are certainly others, but wow, has he been good the last couple of weeks. That'll be a real challenge for K-State. And K-State traditionally has played pretty well against him. Let's hope that continues.
Yeah, and so that was kind of my next talking point. I'm glad you said that, is that last year, Felix aundike-uzomah kind of had his coming out party against TCU and Max Duggan. And we all, to an extent, believe, he kind of got robbed of his NCAA record for sacks or whatever it was, forced fumbles. I don't remember off the top of my head.
With 6. He was credited with 4 and really
That's
had
right,
6.
because there were strip sacks. Yeah. And it was like if the ball went past the line of scrimmage or whatever, so fine, technicalities. But so he's kind of had his coming out party, and then just some statistics. So the Cats have been stellar on defense, allowing 16.7 points per game, 354.5 total yards per game, while also forcing 9 interceptions. This week, they're ranked 4th nationally in turnover margin, 12th in third down defense, 14th in scoring defense and interceptions, 15th in pass efficiency defense, 18th in fourth down defense, and 20th in tackle for loss. So Kansas State, I think a lot of folks coming into the season were kind of like, I don't know if their defense is going to be legit. Their secondary is kind of a question mark. This is a top 10 defense. This is a very stout defense. And TCU, I don't know if they've played a defense with the caliber of Kansas State yet.
Well, I think we're going to find that out, aren't we?
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of different statistics there, and I think let me boil it down and simplify it for you. All of those things that you talked about, they're 14th in this, 18th in this, 3rd in this, whatever it might be, means they're making a lot of plays, and they are playing collectively as a group really, really solid defense. But they will be challenged in this game, and I know it's a challenge that they're looking forward to. I just think there are people now talking about K-State having the best defense in the conference from the standpoint of most complete. Playmakers at every level, as an example. Good tacklers. really good in the things that really matter, like forcing turnovers and getting to quarterbacks and those types of things. Again, they'll be challenged this week, but I like the fact of where K-State is halfway through the season defensively. They've made a ton of progress, no doubt about it.
For sure. And so my thing is that Kansas State, and I love that Coach Klanderman had talked about this with Hunter Deckers at Iowa State, where he said part of the key to how we defend him is controlling how we flush him out of the pocket. And then if you can control that, then you can control how the defense is going to operate based off of that scenario. And you mentioned it yourself. Duggan has become way better at extending plays, steps up in the pocket, he scrambles, he does a bunch of different things now with his legs that he hadn't previously been doing, where he would have taken sacks, and now he's not. So I'm interested to see how Kansas State's defense controls the way that he escapes the pocket, and so you can still get those tackles for loss.
I think you hit on something really big there, because he has hurt a lot of teams when it's not necessarily quarterback run, excuse me, but more of a passing scenario or quarterback run thing, and you don't keep him bracketed in. You lose containment. And he's I think there's a perception out there that he's not the world's greatest athlete at his position. I would challenge that a little, because I believe at least a small part of success is toughness, and he's off the charts in the toughness meter. Is he Colin Klein tough? Maybe not quite, but he's a tough guy. And right now things are going well for them. One thing that I want to see Saturday is K-State pressure him and keep him contained. And if they can do that, and they've done it in the past, now I think the script turns a little bit more towards K-State's favor, even if they are on the road.
Not a whole lot of people are as tough as Colin Klein.
No.
That's a crown that you can happily wear if you get to be in the "I'm as tough as Colin Klein"
no doubt
stratosphere. So I'm going to switch to the offense a little bit, because, and I'm superstitious. Come and get me, but I'm about the announcer jinx. I think if you say it, that it's going to mess it up. So I'm not going to say it specifically, but Adrian Martinez has not thrown a certain statistic yet in the season so far, knock on wood.
Yes.
He's 86 of 138 for 900 yards, 4 touchdowns. It was the first time for Kansas State against Iowa State that there were 2 100-yard receivers for the Wildcats. So Kansas State's passing game, which everybody was kind of freaking out about in the beginning of the season, is really coming around. He passed for 250 yards and a touchdown, the only touchdown of the game against Iowa State last weekend. So how are we feeling, or 2 weekends ago rather, how are we feeling then about Kansas State and the offense coming up against this TCU defense that honestly looked really bad against KU on game day? I mean, the second half was just no defense at all.
Yeah. I'll remind everybody at this point that Jason Bean threw 4 touchdowns against them in the second half of that ball game in Lawrence. It's an interesting matchup when you talk about K-State's offense against their defense, because I do think probably the best part of their defense really is probably the guys up front. They're not household names, but they do a pretty good job. They've had to replace some terrific, like Oklahoma State, terrific linebackers and a couple of people in the secondary. But their secondary has really, like K-State's secondary, I think made some strides through the transfer portal. They've got a young man by the name of Kamara back there who has really helped. And there are others, of course. Perry, the kid from Colorado, is a solid player. So they've gotten pieces. But I do want to see K-State run the football with power and purpose like they did in the fourth quarter in Ames. And I think if they do that, it opens things up. When you play K-State defensively, when the Wildcats have the ball, you're going to certainly, like in every game, try to take something away. But you also have to a certain degree, pick your poison a little bit, because it's hard to take away more than one thing, right? Sure. And K-State does a lot of things pretty well. So I'm very anxious to see, as Coach Kleiman said on Tuesday, how the scenarios play out early in the game. Will we be able to see early K-State get some creases in the run game, or maybe a shock play, a 70-yard touchdown runners? We've seen Deuce Vaughn do that before. So there's a lot going into this. I think that's why it's such an intriguing matchup, to just kind of see from that perspective how the game goes early. and then subsequently through the rest of the game.
Yeah. So the final thing that I wanted to touch on, well, it's kind of like one and a half. The first thing was that I loved what Kobe Savage had to say about how he has a whole Pringles can on his shoulder. It's not just a single chip; it's a whole Pringles can. Because if TCU was his team, he was under recruited coming out of the state of Texas. They kind of snubbed him. He felt this is a big game for him. He's been playing quality ball in the defense. I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. And I just kind of want to get your reaction to that real fast before I give you my final question.
Well, I guess my reaction would be, I almost look at this as not just with Kobe, but I think that is true of that trio of guys. Josh Hayes, Drake Cheatham, and Kobe Savage, all I think have a little bit of that in them. They're not all Texas guys necessarily, but I think they were all undervalued, under-recruited, under whatever. And I think they've proven to K-Staters and to you and I and about everybody else around the Big 12 that they're pretty darn good and they have a lot of experience and they will pop you. Yeah. So I'm thrilled at how they're playing right now. And let's hope that continues in the TCU game.
Yeah. Final thing, conference implications. Kansas State, I think it's kind of murder's row. You have TCU, you have Oklahoma State, and you have Texas. They're all ranked. It's going to be an issue to play against every one of them because they're all good ball clubs. But I think that if you pick up 2 of 3 and then you take care of business against Baylor, West Virginia, and KU at the end of the season, I think you find yourself in Arlington. And I think that's a really exciting prospect. Now, 2 of 3, that's a tall order. 3 of 3, I definitely think that you're in. But 2 of 3, that's how wide open the Big 12 is right now. And I just kind of want to get your reaction to that as well.
I would not disagree with that. And I think you're right. I mean, I heard a guy say earlier today that of all of the teams, TCU may have the easier path moving forward and K-State one of the more difficult paths going forward throughout the entirety of the regular season / conference race. And that may be so. But I think I would point out as an example the Iowa State at Texas game last weekend, or go back to a week ago Thursday with Baylor at West Virginia. I don't know that too many thought that West Virginia was going to win that game. You can make an argument that Iowa State played well enough to beat Texas, even though they didn't. My point is that all of these games are so hard. You better not be taking anything for granted and or peeking around the corner. I know it sounds like a coach's cliche, and I don't mean to do that because that's some people get bored with that. But this league is as hard right now, top to bottom, as we've seen maybe ever. And I just think, regardless of your path, I'm a believer in this. If you take care of business every day and you go out and perform at a pretty high level and get out of the preparation you put in it, I'm fairly confident K-State has a real good chance to get there. Yeah. I really am. It's not a lock or a guarantee, but I think they have every bit as good a chance as everybody else. How's that?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And again, the superstition, if I say it's going to happen, it won't happen, right? So I'm not anywhere close to that. But I do think that you have a good shot if you pick up at least 2 of the next 3. So, hey, thank you for your time, Wyatt. Appreciate it as always. It's going to be great hearing you and Stan all the way down in Fort Worth. We aren't traveling to that game. It's a little bit too far for us, but it was great to hear you guys as always. So appreciate it and safe travels.
You betcha, partner. Great talking to you as always. Thank you.
What's going on, YouTube? This is Kolby Van Camp here, the host of Training Camp on Kansas State University student radio station Wildcat 91.9 FM. If you like the content that I've been putting out, be sure to hit the like button, smash subscribe, and ring the heck out of that bell so that you never miss another one of my shows again.